The wedding dress was suffocating me in ways that had nothing to do with the elaborate corsetry and everything to do with the man waiting at the altar. My name is Victoria Ashford. I'm 24 years old, and I was running away from a marriage that was being orchestrated by two families who'd decided that our union would be politically and financially beneficial. My father had promised my hand to Konstantin Dimitrov, a man 40 years my senior who'd made his fortune through legitimate businesses that everyone knew were fronts for extensive criminal enterprises. The wedding ceremony was happening in exactly 4 minutes, and I was in a full sprint down the marble hallway of the cathedral, my veil streaming behind me like a flag of surrender that I refused to wave. I had no plan. I had no money. I had no idea where I was going. I just knew with absolute clarity that I would rather die than marry Konstantin Dimitrov, a man whose hands probably had blood on them that no amount of expensive soap could ever wash clean. The heels were impossible, so I kicked them off and abandoned them on the pristine white runner, running barefoot toward the exit that promised freedom and terrifying uncertainty. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, get ready because today's story is absolutely insane. It's about a bride who ran from her wedding, a mafia boss who intercepted her escape, and a marriage that was supposed to be a transaction but became the most unexpectedly beautiful love story either of them ever experienced. This is a story about a woman fleeing one trap and walking directly into another trap that turned out to be a paradise she didn't know existed. Before we dive into this incredible, chaotic, dangerously romantic journey, make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this moment when the mafia boss smirks and decides her fate is going to absolutely wreck you emotionally. This story has desperation, fate, danger, redemption, and a marriage that was supposed to be convenient, but became absolutely essential. Now let's get into how a woman running for her life became the most protected person in the entire criminal underworld. The cathedral grounds were vast, acres of manicured gardens, stone walls, security that was theoretically designed to protect the ceremony, but was actually designed to ensure that I couldn't escape. I didn't get far before I heard the commotion behind me. Bridesmaids screaming, wedding guests realizing what was happening. My father's voice roaring my name with a fury that suggested he was about to have an actual heart attack. The gardens were a maze, but I knew them from my childhood. These grounds had been in my mother's family for generations, and I'd played hide-and-seek here countless times. I navigated toward the back fence, the one that led to the service road where delivery trucks came through, my white dress making me completely visible to anyone who was looking, and someone was looking. I heard the black SUV before I saw it, the tires crunching on gravel as it rounded the corner at speeds that suggested the driver didn't care about preserving the landscaping or following traffic laws. I froze. For exactly 1 second, I thought it was Konstantin's men, come to drag me back to my inevitable future. But the man who stepped out of the SUV was not anyone I recognized, which should have terrified me but instead filled me with a strange sense of relief. He was tall, absurdly tall, with dark hair and eyes that looked like they'd witnessed both beauty and brutality in equal measure. His suit was expensive in the way that suggested he had money, and there was something in the way he moved that communicated absolute power. He looked at me, really looked at me, and his expression shifted from calculating to something that resembled dark amusement. "Running away, are we?" he said, his accent vaguely European, his tone suggesting that he found my desperation entertaining rather than pathetic. From the ceremony, clearly, but from something else too, I'm thinking, something worse. Behind him, I could see two men in dark suits, security clearly, keeping their distance but watching with the intensity of people trained to protect their boss from any possible threat. I should have been terrified. I should have run harder. But something in his expression made me understand that running would be pointless. He moved with the casual confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his entire life. "My father," I said, breathless, my white dress streaked with dirt from the gardens, my hair completely unraveling from its elaborate styling. "He's coming. He's going to try to drag me back." The man's smirk deepened into something that was genuinely dangerous. "Your father can try," he said. "I'm Dominic Constantine. I'm the person your father was really afraid of, and I just realized something absolutely critical." He moved closer, studying my face like I was a puzzle he intended to solve. "I need a wife, And you, it seems, need an escape. This could be exactly what both of us need. You don't even know me, I said, though my voice wasn't as certain as I wanted it to be. The screams from inside the cathedral were getting closer, and I could hear my father's voice roaring orders. Dominic took my hand, not gently, not roughly, but with absolute confidence that I wouldn't pull away. I know you're brave enough to run from a forced marriage. I know you have excellent taste in gardens, these are beautiful, by the way. And I know you're about to meet your father's biggest rival, which means your life was already complicated. I'm just offering to complicate it in a direction of my choosing. He pulled me toward the SUV. Get in, right now. If you stay, you marry Konstantin Dimitrov. If you come with me, you marry me instead. Consider it the less terrible of two terrible options. The SUV was already moving before I'd fully processed that I was sitting inside it, my wedding dress taking up an entire bench seat, my bare feet dirty against the pristine leather interior. You can't just kidnap someone, I said, more to convince myself than him. Dominic glanced at me and his smile was absolutely feral. I absolutely can. I'm already doing it. And more importantly, I'm saving you from a far worse fate. Konstantin Dimitrov is 63 years old. He has 3 ex-wives he abused, and he has plans for you that involve producing heirs, and then disposing of you once you're no longer useful. He navigated through traffic with one hand, his entire demeanor suggesting that red lights were suggestions rather than requirements. I, on the other hand, need a wife to cement an alliance with the Russian mob. Nothing more complicated than that. You produce the marriage, I provide protection and freedom. It's a transaction, but at least it's an honest one. That's not honest, I said, my voice shaking. That's kidnapping and forced marriage. That's exactly what I was running from, except with different decorations. Dominic took a sharp turn, and I realized we were leaving the city limits, heading toward something I couldn't identify. Not forced, he corrected calmly. I'm giving you a choice. Marry me right now and I protect you. Refuse me and I take you back to your father and you marry Konstantin as originally planned. What's your choice? He was right. As much as I hated to admit it, he was offering me a choice. A terrible choice. An insane choice. A choice that involved marrying a man I'd just met, but a choice nonetheless. And more importantly, it was a choice that didn't involve Konstantin Dimitrov's ancient hands on my body and his obsession with producing heirs. Where are we going? I asked instead of answering. Dominic glanced over. To the airport, I have a plane. We fly to Moscow, we get married there, and we become officially unavailable to anyone who's looking for you. Your father will be furious, Konstantin will be furious, but they'll also accept it because I have resources they can't touch. He paused. You'll have your own apartment in my penthouse. You'll have your own money, not controlled by me or your father. You'll have freedom within reason. And in return, you'll be my wife on paper and at social functions. That's the transaction. I should have asked more questions. I should have recognized the danger. Instead, I heard myself saying, "What's your name? I mean, your real name? I assume Dominic Konstantin is what you want people to call you, but who are you really?" His expression softened fractionally. My real name is Dominic Konstantin. I don't have a deeper identity hiding underneath. What you see is what you get. A man who built an empire through ruthlessness and intelligence. A man who's never been in love, who doesn't believe love is real, who sees relationships as strategic alliances. But I'm also a man who believes in honesty, who respects courage, and who just met a woman brave enough to run from her own wedding in full white dress. He looked at me. The question isn't who I am. The question is whether you're brave enough to choose an uncertain future with me instead of a certain nightmare with Konstantin. The plane was waiting, and I realized with startling clarity that Dominic had planned this entire scenario. He'd orchestrated my escape. He'd been waiting at that specific moment, at that specific location, like he'd known exactly when and where I would run. How did you know? I asked as his men ushered me toward the aircraft, toward the point of no return. My father told me about your wedding, Dominic said simply. He also told me about Konstantin Dimitrov's reputation for brutality, and he told me that you had a tendency toward rebellion, so I made a calculated bet that you'd run, and I positioned myself to intercept your escape. He smiled. Lucky for both of us, I was right. The plane took off and I was sitting in the most luxurious cabin I'd ever seen. Still wearing my ruined wedding dress, still completely barefoot, still in a state of shock that I'd somehow exchanged one arranged marriage for another one, with a man who was possibly far more dangerous. But Dominic produced fresh clothing, a shower, and a meal, and he gave me privacy without demanding explanations. "We have 6 hours before we land in Moscow," he said. "You can sleep, you can shower, you can ask questions, or you can sit in silence. I don't care. But you should know that once we land, you're my wife. You don't get to change your mind after that." I realized then that Dominic wasn't romantic. He was transactional, just like he'd said. But he was also giving me space, giving me time, respecting my autonomy within the boundaries he'd established. That was worth something. The wedding in Moscow was nothing like the cathedral ceremony I'd fled from. It was held in a small courthouse with only Dominic's closest advisors present, men with hard faces and dangerous eyes who barely acknowledged my existence. The woman conducting the ceremony was efficient and emotionless, speaking in Russian that Dominic translated for my benefit. "She's asking if you consent," he whispered. "This is your last moment to change your mind." I looked at Dominic, looked at the men surrounding us, looked at the reality of what I was about to become. And I said yes. The word felt like a door closing and another one opening simultaneously. We were married in exactly 12 minutes, and I became Victoria Constantine, wife to a mafia boss, stranger to the man I'd just legally bound myself to, owner of a wedding ring that probably cost more than my father's house. The penthouse in Moscow was extraordinary, sprawling across 2 entire floors, decorated with art that looked like it belonged in museums, overlooking the city like Dominic owned every building beneath us. "This is your home now," he said, handing me a credit card with no limit. "These are your rooms." He showed me to an apartment-sized section of the penthouse that had its own bedroom, bathroom, living area, and kitchen. "You have complete autonomy within these spaces. No one enters without your permission. You have access to everything in the main areas. You have a car, a driver, security who'll follow at a distance, and you have the freedom to do whatever you want, as long as it doesn't embarrass me publicly or jeopardize my business interests." Over the next month, I learned that Dominic was exactly who he'd claimed to be: ruthless, intelligent, completely devoid of sentimentality. He conducted business from his study with a precision that was actually impressive. He made decisions that affected thousands of people with the casualness of someone ordering coffee. He was kind to his staff but utterly terrifying to his rivals. And he treated me with a distant respect that was somehow worse than if he'd ignored me completely. We ate dinner together most nights, and I realized that Dominic was intelligent in ways that were almost painful. He could discuss philosophy, economics, psychology, and art with an expertise that suggested he read constantly. But he never asked about me. He never inquired about my thoughts or my feelings. I was furniture in his life, albeit furniture he'd paid for and housed and decorated with a gold wedding ring. The party where everything shifted was a gala celebrating a business merger between Dominic's organization and a legitimate investment firm. I was required to attend as his wife, and Dominic had a designer outfit delivered, a dress that was stunning and also clearly a statement about his status, his wealth, his possession of me. But Dominic didn't introduce me to anyone. He barely touched me. He seemed almost embarrassed by my presence. I was standing alone, nursing a drink, feeling like an imposter at a party full of people who actually belonged, when a woman approached me. She introduced herself as Anastasia, and she was clearly a rival, the kind of woman Dominic had probably been involved with before he acquired me. "So you're the American bride," Anastasia said, her tone suggesting that acquiring a bride was somehow beneath Dominic's standards. "The girl who couldn't hold on to her original engagement." She smiled cruelly. "Dominic goes through wives like some men go through wine. You should know that. He'll keep you until you're no longer useful, and then he'll discard you." I wanted to defend myself, wanted to claim that my marriage was real, wanted to believe that I meant something to Dominic beyond his business strategy. Instead, I felt the cold reality of my situation settle over me like a shroud. Dominic had captured me when I was vulnerable. He'd married me when I was desperate. He'd housed me and clothed me and given me money, but he'd done it all without actually valuing me as a human being. That night I confronted Dominic in his study. "Why did you marry me if you don't even like me?" I asked, my voice shaking with a rage I didn't know I possessed. "You could have just hidden me somewhere. You could have just kept me as leverage against my father. Why make it official?" Dominic looked up from his computer, and for the first time his expression was genuine, not calculated, not strategic, but actually emotional. "I married you," he said slowly, "because you were brave, because you chose uncertain freedom over certain torture, because you reminded me that not everyone in this world is motivated by money and power." He paused. "And because somewhere in the last month, watching you read in the library, watching you try to make conversation with staff who were terrified to talk to you, watching you slowly understand that I'm not going to hurt you, I realized that I wanted to know you." He stood and moved around the desk, and I instinctively moved backward. But Dominic didn't advance on me. Instead, he just looked at me. "I'm not good at this," he continued. "I'm not good at being vulnerable. I'm not good at admitting that I need someone. I married you to solve a business problem, but somewhere between the wedding and right now, you became something else entirely. Someone I actually care about. And I have absolutely no idea how to communicate that because I've spent 37 years learning not to care about anything." I wanted to believe him. But I also recognized that Dominic was skilled at manipulation. His entire career was built on saying exactly the right thing to make people behave the way he wanted them to. "Prove it," I said. "If you actually care about me, then give me autonomy in a way that matters. Let me help you. Let me be part of your life instead of separate from it. Let me in instead of keeping me in a beautiful cage." For a long moment, Dominic didn't respond. Then he did something I'd never seen him do. He laughed. Not a strategic laugh, not a calculated laugh, but a genuine laugh that suggested he was actually amused by my audacity. "You're asking the Mafia Boss to let you into the criminal organization?" "I'm asking my husband to let me be his wife in ways that matter," I said. "Not just legally, not just as decoration, but as a partner." Dominic nodded slowly. "That's dangerous," he said. "If you know too much, I'll have to protect you differently. If you understand how the organization works, I'll have to consider your safety in ways I haven't before. If you're part of my life, I'll become vulnerable because people I care about are always targets." He paused. "But you're right. A marriage that's only transactional isn't a marriage at all. So yes, I'll let you in. But you need to understand what that means." Over the next 6 months, I slowly became a real partner in Dominic's empire. I helped him with business strategy. I had a degree in economics that I'd never been allowed to use, and suddenly it had purpose. I reviewed contracts. I analyzed investments. I offered perspective on decisions that affected thousands of people. And more importantly, I earned his respect. The man who'd married me because I was brave and convenient slowly transformed into a man who valued my opinion, who sought my counsel, who looked at me with something that resembled genuine affection instead of strategic appreciation. The moment I knew I loved him, truly, genuinely loved him rather than feeling grateful to him, was when his organization faced a challenge from a rival family. Dominic was in danger in a way that was immediate and potentially fatal. Instead of protecting me by hiding me away, Dominic included me in the planning. He consulted me. He asked for my input on strategy. And when the conflict escalated, he made decisions that protected both of our interests, not just his own. "I can't lose you," he said one night as we lay in bed together. "That's the vulnerability I was afraid of. I was afraid that caring about someone would make me weak. But you've made me stronger because now I have something worth fighting for besides power." 2 years after our wedding, I discovered I was pregnant. When I told Dominic, he actually wept. This powerful man, this ruthless businessman, sat in our bedroom and cried because we were creating life together. "I never thought I could be a father," he said. "I never thought I deserved to be a father. But you've taught me that redemption is possible, that change is possible, that love is actually real." He held me like I was made of glass, and I understood that our marriage had transformed from a transaction into something genuine, something that transcended the circumstances of how it had begun. Our daughter, Elena, was born on a spring morning, and Dominic held her like she was the most precious thing he'd ever touched. He whispered to her in Russian, making promises about the world he'd build for her, about the man he was going to become so that she could be proud of her father. I watched my husband, the mafia boss who'd kidnapped me from my wedding, become someone capable of tenderness, capable of vulnerability, capable of love. "Thank you," he whispered to me that night, for saying yes in that airport, for trusting me when you had absolutely no reason to, for becoming my wife instead of just my possession. The legal ramifications of how we'd met eventually caught up with us, but Dominic handled it the way he handled everything, with resources and strategic thinking. My father, recognizing that I'd actually gained status through the marriage rather than lost it, eventually accepted the reality of the situation. Konstantin Dimitrov never forgave me for the humiliation, but he also accepted that challenging Dominic Konstantin was a losing proposition. My life transformed from the nightmare I'd been fleeing into a life that was complicated, but genuinely happy. 10 years after running from my wedding, I stood in the same cathedral where it all began. But this time I was renewing my vows with Dominic by choice, with full knowledge of who he was and what he'd done, with 3 children we'd created together, with a marriage that had survived danger and darkness, and emerged stronger. Dominic held my hand as we spoke words that were much more meaningful than the ones we'd exchanged in that Moscow courthouse. "I didn't plan to fall in love with you," he said in his vows. "I planned to marry you for strategy. But you became the strategy for everything, for building a better life, for becoming a better man, for understanding that power without love is just destruction." So that's our story, everyone. From a bride running from her wedding to a woman who married her captor, and discovered that sometimes fate plays cruel tricks that eventually become blessings. If this story moved you, if it made you believe that even dangerous men can change through genuine love, please smash that like button. Share this with someone who needs to know that sometimes the person who saves you isn't the one you were expecting. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of dangerous romance, redemption, and love that defies logic. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me, did you think Dominic's intentions were genuine from the beginning, or did he actually develop feelings over time? Would you have trusted him the way Victoria did? Do you think being kidnapped and married by a mafia boss is ever really romantic? Or is it always just a beautiful way to describe trauma? Tell me, perfect, I needed a wife, if you believed in this love story from the moment they met. Tell me, brave enough to say yes if you think Victoria made the right choice. Tell me, redemption through love, if you believe that Dominic's transformation was earned and real. Tell me, fate in a cathedral, if you think running from one wedding into another with a mafia boss is the universe's way of rerouting destiny. Tell me, transaction to love, if you've learned that sometimes strategic alliances become genuine partnerships. See you in the next video. Remember, sometimes the person who intercepts your escape becomes the person who makes you feel genuinely safe.